Greetings, humans, Daleks, Time Lords, and Ood. You are listening to Exterminating Doctor Who.
This is the show that takes Doctor Who's most talked about episodes to debate if they're really as good or as bad as their reputations.
With your hosts, Aidan Gula.
And me, George Ellis.
And in today's episode, we are talking about the Impossible Planet / the Satan Pit with Niall Carey.
Hello.
Hello, Niall.
Hello.
Hi, I'm so used to saying, hello, girls and guys. I
Yes.
almost did that.
Yeah,
But no,
good
hello.
job you didn't. No,
Yeah, it's lovely to be on the show.
yeah, that's the reason I know you. I have done 3 podcasts with you before about this little band here.
Yeah.
And there's that little band
Matching
there.
T-shirts, yeah.
Yes. I hope it's not actually the
No,
same
we're not,
T-shirt.
no.
That'd be really embarrassing, wouldn't it? But,
We're not. But no, it's lovely to be on the show, guys.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
it's great
good,
to have
good
you.
to have you on. Switching up usually I'm the one I'm the guest on your podcast, kind of just make it up as I go along. So now you can be here making it up as you go along.
Indeed.
So
That's what I do on my own show anyway.
We'll see if
Yeah.
you actually did watch Doctor Who. So
'Cause he's got all
Doctor
the
what?
stuff-
It's
he's got-
quite good, yeah.
yeah, he's
Dr.
got all the
what?
stuff behind him, but it could just be a ploy just to get on the
Yeah.
to get on.
Yeah,
the
He
this
wants to
is-
get.
this-
You want to get on our really famous Doctor Who podcast. Try and grow your own. I see how.
Yeah,
it
no,
is.
no. This is just a Zoom background. This is all that is.
Yeah, that's actually not real.
Gosh.
No, so I remember when we've said this before on this podcast, that before this podcast actually had George as a co-host, the original plan was to have a different guest every week. And I
Correct.
promised you way back then that we would get you on an episode.
You
that
did.
was about a year ago.
Mhm.
And you're finally here. So now
Yeah.
we can ask you what your Doctor Who profile is. And
Oh.
ask you, how did you get into Doctor Who? Who's your favorite Doctor? What's your favorite episode? Give us your Doctor Who profile, as we do with all our guests.
Okay. Well, I'll start off with the Doctor Who profile because I don't want to talk about my favorite Doctor just yet because I feel like that's the big question that everyone wants to
Okay,
know.
you want to build up to that?
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
obviously.
Dramatic.
So the Doctor Who profile. I was always like vaguely aware of Doctor Who, like growing up, because I'm a little bit older than you guys. Obviously, I wasn't around when it was airing. Back in the original.
There's about a
series,
50-year gap, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
between me and you guys. Yeah, about that. I'm 76 years old.
You look
Um,
good though. It's good.
Thanks. Yeah, I've had some work done. It was the thoughts and prayers of humanity. They made me look this young again.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Did you do the Jesus pose
I did,
as
yeah,
you
I
as
did,
you rose
yeah.
up? Yeah.
But no, I've always been like vaguely aware of Doctor Who because like my grandparents were massive fans of the show, back in the classic era, and they would sometimes talk about it and make references to it, and I would be like, oh, that's cool. But obviously, as you know, it was hard to watch classic Who back in the day, and even now, I know it's on BritBox, I think it is. So they never had any DVDs or tapes like that, so I never actually seen it. I seen pictures of like the Daleks and stuff like that, but I never actually seen an episode. And then obviously the revival came along, and my grandparents were super hyped about it, and it just became one of those like really cool family traditions, starting from like the first episode on with Rose, and then all the way up. I mean, they stopped around Matt Smith's era, but obviously I continued, and it's just become one of those cool family traditions. Like I remember the pivotal moment for me that stands out in my Doctor Who history is that the TV Guide's cover for the Dalek episode in season 1 was like the big sort of talk of this, like everything, the Daleks are coming back, and obviously me had never seen a Dalek before, or have never seen a Dalek in video before, I should say, was
In
super
action.
excited. Yeah, and the episode turned out to be amazing, and I think like I obviously liked the show before, but that was the one that made me fall in love with it, if you know what I mean. So that would really be, and then ever since then I've just I've become obsessive with it. Maybe not so much in recent years because of quality of programming, which I do want to touch on, by the way. Jodie Whittaker, I actually like her as a doctor, as an actor, but the scripts are crap. But I'm not gonna.
Our
I'll get into
Witchfinders episode basically just summarizes that, really.
Yeah.
She had potential, the writing just let her down.
Yeah. I mean, I also have some thoughts on that, but I've become obsessive with it, and there were various points in my life that I considered getting a TARDIS tattoo or anything like that. I haven't got any tattoos. But
I was about to say,
that's how
did you get one then?
Yeah, I was
No,
quite
no.
excited then.
No, it was actually originally a plan for me and my sister, because my sister was a massive Doctor Who fan, not so much anymore. Before Peter Capaldi's era, when Matt Smith regenerated, she just fell out of it.
Get her to watch this podcast. You can find her love for Doctor Who again.
I can barely get her to listen to my own.
Wasn't she on it?
Yeah, exactly. But no, we were gonna get like a TARDIS that was like half materializing on my shoulder or arm or whatever, and then the other half materializing on her shoulder, so it looked like the same TARDIS. And but that ended up not working out. And now that the show is sort of declined in quality and stuff, my my wishes to get a TARDIS tattoo are waning. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, there. Further down the line, if it picks up again.
Maybe get it as like a memorial for what Doctor Who once was,
Yeah,
rather than what it's becoming.
You could just put rest in peace underneath
R.I.P.
it.
Doctor.
Yeah.
No. As for favorite episode, oh god, that's such a hard one. I think like you. I think you'd have to categorize them personally, because like there are some really good standalone episodes that would be considered my favorite episode if it was just like all standalone episodes, like Blink or Midnight or anything like that. But I think if you look at like the actual overarching story and stuff, it might have to be the two-parter of the season 4 of David Tennant's era. Whenever everything sort of climaxed and Davros came back and all that kind of stuff. That was like quintessential Doctor Who for me. It was like a big moment in my life, as well as I think everybody else's. So that's
that between that and Day of the Doctor, they're the two that always switch between my number one spot. If I've just watched Day of the Doctor, I'll go, God, this is my favorite episode. But then I'll watch Stolen Earth, Journey's End, and go, no, wait, this one is. And it's basically that just keeps happening all the time.
With Turn Left. Turn Left was also great. Like
I love that one as well. But we won't ask George's opinion on
it. I don't remember. Listen, I don't remember it that fondly, but we are watching it for series 2 of this podcast to check whether or not George is an idiot or not.
I honestly think upon rewatching it, you'll enjoy it a lot more, because you'll pick up on the subtle things of it, like them sending them off to like concentration camps. Because
probably when I was younger, I was probably watching it and thinking, "Where the hell's David gone? This is boring." That's probably what happened. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah. No. So as far as episodes go, those are, which is weird because I love David Tennant. Don't get me wrong. He will always be my Doctor, but he's not my favorite Doctor. If you know what I mean.
Let's see where this goes.
So he's obviously the one. If someone says Doctor Who, I picture David Tennant. Like 100% of the time, I picture David Tennant. Whenever someone says who is the Doctor, it's David Tennant. But I find myself increasingly in recent times rather in revisiting Capaldi's era of Doctor Who, because that's to me is quintessentially the best sort of sci-fi that was on the show for a very, very long time. And I love the David Tennant's sort of soap opera aspects and all that kind of stuff that Russell T Davies introduced to the show. But for me, it will always be sci-fi first and foremost. And Capaldi really pulled off that I am an alien that just so happens to look like a human, whereas David was a heartthrob and was very human for an alien. But as I said, I'm never going to say a bad word against him because he is my Doctor. But Capaldi, I think, is my favorite to watch.
Aidan will firmly relate to that whole growth there.
Well, no, that's all very interesting. And yes, for the tally, as these guest specials go along, I think me and George are competing over who says 10th Doctor the most and who says 12th Doctor the most. So we're currently at 1-1. So
it's not really about who says the 10th Doctor, because everyone knows the 10th Doctor's the best. So it's about how many people stroke Aidan's ego. That's kind of how we're
it's when they realize whoever people think is the top dog here, don't they? They decide, I'm going to appeal to George, and so we've said, no, I'm going to appeal to Aidan. So the episode you have chosen for us, Niall, is The Impossible Planet, the Satan Pit. I do quite like that this is chosen because the two episodes of the podcast I did with you, obviously your Gospel of Ghosts one, had the name Satan in it. So it's quite nice that you come over here and bring Satan with you. So
I had to.
It seems appropriate. Even when you were saying, oh, I might want to do Amy's Choice, it was still felt like this feels like the natural one to do. So
One day I'm going to podcast with something not with Satan in it. That's
Yeah,
the main
maybe,
goal.
or maybe this would just be your brand forever.
It just feels like you probably sold your soul, Niall, and now everything is just Satan related.
Yeah.
You're famous. You're going to be famous, but it all has to do with Satan. It's kind of
If I sold my soul, I think my listeners would be better.
Yeah.
Well, they're still better than us. But anyway.
Yeah. I will sell my soul at this point. That's how I'm feeling.
So it's obviously one of your favorite episodes to have chosen this then. So generally, do we think this is a especially strong episode or just a very kind of good one to watch? What are we all thinking? What are our general thoughts?
Well, to turn it round, Aidan, I asked you a very similar question on the last episode of my show that you were on. I was like, "Is this one of your favorite songs?" You're like, "No, it's one of the only ones that was available."
That's true. I see where this is going.
having been told that Midnight was not a guest episode and I couldn't select Midnight or any of the ones that you had planned, this was the one that jumped out to me. So it is one of the two parts that you're not covering.
You get what you get, and you basically you're giving Aidan what he deserves. Really.
We've explained the Midnight problem to you. Okay?
Exactly.
This isn't our fault.
Exactly,
well,
but
it's not my fault or Niall's. It falls down to the showrunner.
Yeah, right. That's exactly Doctor Who's problem and will always be.
Yes.
But no, it is a very, very strong episode and a very strong two-parter that you just happen to not be covering. And I don't know whether that's because it's nostalgic in my mind or anything like that. But I actually went and asked my roommate or my housemate, Kieran, who is not a Doctor Who fan. He was a Doctor Who fan back whenever David Tennant, and it was huge. He watched it in David Tennant's era. And I asked him, do you remember the episodes about the devil? And he was like, yeah, they were awesome. They were one of my favorites. So I'm thinking that maybe this might be one of the casual fans' favorite episodes,
maybe,
as opposed to the hardcore ones.
That felt directed.
Well, it's actually, so I feel like when you chose
surprised you'd seen it.
When you chose this one, it was an interesting one because I love it. I do genuinely love this two-parter, but I feel like I've watched it a lot recently. That's because not long ago I just had an impromptu rewatch the series 2, where I just felt like watching it again and watched that. And not long before that, when I was in university, I had a couple of friends who, I'm not really going to speak about them anymore, but they were liked Doctor Who, but they were only very casual fans. George doesn't even know who they are, but they were only very casual fans. And they said, "Oh, come over, we're watching Doctor Who." So I was like, "Okay," and I went over and joined them. And this was the episode they were watching. So I feel like I've seen it a lot. And again, that's the casual fans. Maybe people do actually just kind of like this one. And it isn't on our series 2 schedule purely just because there were others that I thought were better than this. So it just got knocked out of
just
the
didn't
list.
make the cut kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I do genuinely. I wrote one negative note, and that was kind of just a problem I have generally with series 2, not really specifically this episode. So I do think it's a very strong episode and can't really be faulted. It's really fun to watch. It's really scary without really having a monster in it until the final 10 minutes, really. And it's a bloody good episode. That's just how I can really just sum it up.
Yeah.
I agree. I really like these two episodes, and I've always remembered them fondly. And I hadn't actually seen them in a very long time. I think in my brain sometimes I get these mixed up with another episode. I can't remember what it is, but it's also kind of spacey, and I've always remembered it. Maybe it's kind of bad, but in my brain, whenever I remember back to this, I've always spliced it with another one. I don't know why. It's probably my brain mixing stuff, but
it's probably, as they say in this episode, when they say these bases are built out of flat packs, you probably thought of another similar basey kind of episode.
Probably.
They're the same thing. I mean, they've equated into one, but yeah.
But I really enjoy these both episodes. Yes, George enjoyed these both episodes, and they're both really strong and very good. And this is the thing about being like a huge fan of Doctor Who when it was kind of big with David Tennant. A lot of my memory when I think back to it, it's like, oh, all of it kind of blurs together. So when you revisit it, it's interesting having like a definitive. This is these two episodes. These are good. That kind of thing. So. Yeah, no, but they're really good, really strong episodes. I enjoyed them.
I feel
Good
like I'm a
choice.
massive nerd though, because like you say, oh, they all blend together. But if you told me any of the episode titles, I could tell you whether.
Yeah,
No,
yes. I know what George means though. It's like if you've not seen them for a while, the era blends together. I know exactly what you mean. Like
I know the difference between the episodes, but it's
especially because this episode aired 15 years ago. Like if we're asking you to remember what happened 15 years ago, you'd go, I don't remember. So, I can understand trying to remember television from 15 years ago. I can understand that. Is there anywhere specific you want to start? Because I think it just, from the moment it begins and Ten and Rose are just laughing at something and you just feel like, it just feels comfortable straight away when it begins. I'm already like, I'm sold. I'm already enjoying this. We're like 5 seconds into the episode and already I'm like, this is good. So it's like, if there's a specific place somebody wants to start, do shout. But I'm just like, it's just strong all the way through. That it's
the whole cast. I want to just mention something about every single member of the cast is incredibly strong. Like each character they're playing, they play them brilliantly, I think. And you mentioned how the commander, I don't know the character's name because they all
Zachary
kind of blurred together.
Zachary, yeah.
But he's got a Big Finish spin-off because he mentions Tortured Ones, and I'm like, Tortured. That was kind of a nice little moment. I was, I see, that's cool. But no, the cast, all of them are strong. David's amazing, obviously. Billy Piper's great, and then kind of the whole. Not usually when it comes to Doctor Who, sometimes you can. What can happen is you have the main 2 or 3 or the TARDIS team are great, and then kind of the people they meet are kind of
cannon fodder.
Yes, they're okay, but they're not really memorable. In this one, they're all played and acted and written brilliantly. And what that meant is when someone were to die or there'd be a big moment for them, it really resonated with me. Like both, like the 2 deaths, which really hit me was the one from, I forget her name, is it Scooty or whatever they call her, where she's floating.
Scooty Minister, the first one to die,
where she's floating out in space. That bit is damn heartbreaking with the music and everything. That's incredibly done, and that was really upsetting actually. And then the one in the vent where it was just kind of like a soldier who's kind of
when he sacrifices himself
at the end of
Mr. Jefferson
road, really end of his journey. And that was a really both of those deaths could have been really cheesy, especially the second one, but it still landed really well and didn't feel like a wasted character. It felt like he achieved something in that death. It was quite wonderful, actually.
Yeah. I completely agree.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean, because I wrote something saying like, this is fundamentally a base under siege story. We're in a base, it's under siege.
Yeah.
Job done. It's a fairly simple format of Doctor Who that has been used for over 50 years. Yeah. A lot of the time with those kind of things, you do have the cast and you kind of just look at them and you go, I think maybe 1 or 2 of them will survive, the rest will die. And you I can't really think of many other episodes where I remember each character of the team. Like there's very few other examples. Usually it's just, here's the team, somebody will get killed. Here's somebody will get killed. The one that has a few lines is the one that survives. But here,
or the famous actor,
yeah, exactly. But here, like George said, every single one of them has their own character, is developed. We know a bit about their life. So then when they die, it is devastating. And you don't really ever really feel that for many Doctor Who based on siege stories. It kind of is just like, right, you're dead. Let's move on. Let's go to the next room. And it's nice to have something where it is like, oh, Scooty's dead. Oh, that's quite sad. And then you don't just go, but anyway, let's move on. You do kind of sit with it thinking, oh, that's a bit of a shame that is. And then you get over it as you go along. But it does sit on you. And I love that effect of this episode.
It's interesting watching it again after so long, because when I was younger, I wouldn't have connected with these character moments nearly as much as I do now. So it is very interesting revisiting it. That adds a layer. You were going to say something now.
I think actually, like, I completely agree with all of your points. Like, you could point to other based on their stage stories, like the Rebel Flesh, for example, Matt Smith's one about the
Rebel Flesh,
the gangers, whatever they're called. And like, I don't really remember any of those characters really, apart from like a view of their traits. Just like this one is sick, this one is a dad, this one is blah blah blah. But this one, they all have like really like solid like individual personalities. They're all based on stereotypes. They are a stereotypical cast. They have their roles within the story, but the added performances, I suppose, of the actors and just the little details that they give you, it does make them feel a lot more human, which ultimately gets you way more invested in it.
Yeah.
I think ironically, the one that I would say is least developed amongst the entire cast is Toby, who is probably got the most pivotal moment or pivotal role within the story of the cast, because obviously he gets, possessed. But that's the reason he's not developed enough. So he gets possessed really early on, and you don't get that emotional connection with Toby, because the very, very few scenes he was in beforehand, he was either kind of a dick or he was just quiet. You know what I mean?
It just wasn't the center of attention. Yeah. It's kind of like, even if you tried to get attached to the guy, he was already Satan before you could.
Yeah. I also thought I thought the exact same thing as well. And then it kind of made me laugh in the scene later when the devil, let's call him the devil. I know he's credited as the beast, so let's maybe the beast. Yeah. So when the beast is playing on all their fears, and he goes into like a lot of detail with everybody, and he's going, "Oh, the one virgin," and then he gets to Toby and just goes virgin, and then moves on. And it's just like with everybody, they've got this whole description about what they've been doing. Oh, does your wife forgive you? I don't think she did, and all these kind of things. And he just goes one word and then just moves on. So it's like, even then I was laughing at that because I thought they're not even bothering with developing the Toby. God, he's possessed. Get over it. That's just all his role is here. But yeah. It's like
speaking of the devil, I've actually have a little bit of trivia to do with the beast in the story. So first off, I want to say this episode was broadcast on the week of the 6th of July in 2006. So it would have been 666. First off,
July, but that's 7 though.
No, sorry, June. Sorry, yes, my bad. June.
This was aired on my birthday.
We'll have to fact check you here.
It was aired on the week of the 6th. So not on the 6th itself, because the 6th was a Thursday. So the week of was like Satan week, because the Omen stuff released. But
and I turned 5.
And you turned 5.
My birthday.
Sorry,
my birthday is 6/6.
So. Nice.
It explains a lot of why Aidan is the person he is, really.
I'm just sitting here because I turned 30 in about 3 weeks' time, and I would have been 15 years old.
I was 5. I'm the youngest
Christ.
Here. 21 in November.
I have this. According to Doctor Who magazine, issue 401 or 401, the production before settling on the beast and the writing before settling on the beast considered putting either Davros or the Master in the pit as opposed to Satan.
And I'm so glad they didn't.
No, yeah,
that would have been worse.
Same,
yeah,
same.
that feels like a classic kind of comic book problem. Here's this really nice idea for a story. Let's make it someone you know. And it's like, yeah, that ruins it. Like, it's like, imagine if they made, I'm going to Batman again. Imagine if they made the Court of Owls Joker. I'd be like, you've ruined it. Like, because there's no point. You don't need to.
I would argue the devil was a more famous villain than Davros and the Master.
Well, yeah. In terms of the Doctor Who world and fandom, you know what I'm saying. But I think it works better as it being not an unknown, but it has a whole legend behind it.
Yeah, I was finding a few similarities actually midnight in a few places, and especially in the way that they kind of leave, and they kind of haven't really saved the day because we don't really know what happened. Like, we've saved a few people and it's all nice and dandy, but actually the Doctor's gone, I acknowledge you're a beast, you're there, you're before me, but I don't believe you are what you say you are. And we do leave. And when Rose is saying, well, what do you think it was? He goes, well, I think it's defeated. And he still doesn't really know. And I found that quite similar to Midnight in the sense that in Midnight, they leave, they escape the bus, and they go, I still don't really know what it was, but it's over, I think. And I found that really similar here. And I think that's just quite a strong, mysterious ending for an episode like this to do, where it's playing with something that could be quite controversial by saying, here's the devil, he's real, but is he? And I think that's a kind of
I think they kind of have to do that then.
Yeah.
They can't settle on anything because it is such a a legendary thing in both real world and this fictional world. So if they were to settle on something, it'd probably have quite a lot of repercussions.
But then in
But-
saying that, Abaddon was in Torchwood. His son was in Torchwood.
Yes, that's true.
So yeah, his son was in Torchwood, and he was directly referenced as being the son of Lucifer, of Satan. So like, is that the devil? Like, are we saying that's not the beast?
But then you could interpret that as being that's the son of the beast. Do you know what I mean?
True.
Or you could say that's it's all
maybe
very
it's just like, you can say that the beast was the original devil and everyone based it off it, or you could say that the beast was inspired by the actual devil, or like everything since isn't a thing, or you could just say there was never a devil and these are just,
because also
I don't know, it's all
like
fascinating.
Because you think like if this guy's he says I've been locked in this rock since before time.
I don't think he says it like that. I've been locked in this rock.
Yeah, well, I did this in another episode, didn't I? When I give a really reductionist view of Doctor Who, I'm just like, basically, it's a bloke in a box. But no, this is like, I'm stuck in a rock before time. And so then you think, if he is the inspiration for the devil, how? Because how has anybody seen him? How have they had any interaction with this guy if he's just chained to this rock for billions of years? So there are a lot of things where you think, maybe this is the inspiration. But how does that work? And that's like when the Doctor's saying, but before time isn't possible. If it was during time, sideways of time, he's saying all these things make sense, but not before time. And I think it's quite nice to actually have an episode that delves into what does the Doctor actually believe? Does he have a belief system? Does he have a belief system? Or is it just, I've seen it, therefore I believe it? Or are there things that the Doctor does think, I believe this is a thing, but I'm yet to meet it? And then if he does meet it, he just goes, don't believe you. And I know that's a nice concept to play on for this episode.
Yeah, I agree with you, Aidan. I did note down that one of my favorite part of the episode was when the Doctor was descending into the pit, and Ida was talking to him about his faith and what he believes in. And it's not often that we get in Doctor Who we get those like really personal questions directed from someone who's not the companion at the time to the Doctor, because normally it's all running, screaming, shouting, blah blah blah, running down corridors. So having this quiet moment with someone who was trying to get to know the Doctor's belief system and what he might fall into, it was really cool as a fan, because like we have no idea what the religion of Gallifrey is.
Yeah,
like,
is there one? Are they believe?
Don't try it.
Don't give us one.
Don't give us one. We don't need one. Just like we didn't need an origin story. But yeah, it was really, really cool. I really, really enjoyed that sort of deep dive into the Doctor's sort of belief, and even Satan calling him out, just being like, is that what you believe whenever you're talking about before time? It's just like, the Doctor doesn't really know what to say to that. Which was cool.
And it's an interesting thing as an audience to be like, if we're watching an episode and the Doctor says, I believe this thing, then we automatically believe it. And if it's something that it's like, it's kind of real worldy, but it's kind of not real worldy. And then it questions, well, do I believe the Doctor here? Is the Doctor telling the truth? Or is he just saying, well, maybe he could be wrong. Maybe there is something else. And it's quite, when do we ever get to watch a Doctor episode where we go, no, the Doctor's wrong? Like objective, like, do you know what I mean? I don't mean like he's doing an action that's wrong, but he's got a theory that we can say, I think that's wrong. We don't.
Yeah.
Usually it's some high sci-fi concept that's way beyond our understanding. So we just go, yes, okay, sure, whatever. But here we can go, well, no, maybe there is a devil actually, Doctor. That's just what you believe. So that's kind of a cool concept as well.
Yeah, I think that's part of the beauty of the episode. Like, I'm really glad that they didn't give it a concrete, this is Satan or this is thing. It's like, as George was saying earlier, this could be the result of belief, of the manifestation maybe of belief or whatever, sort of the inverse of what they did with the Doctor in series 3 becoming Jesus. Everyone sort of believed the devil into existence, or as George put it, it could be that this one creature, and they did allude to this in the episode, was sort of the basis for all of the Satans within religion. He might not be what the religion says he is, but because he's such an evil creature from before time or whatever, it seeped their way into the consciousness that this is the devil, and it just happens to be the same creature from that encompasses every single religion, even though they don't really know it, which is a really interesting take for Doctor Who to try and approach.
But it's often, sometimes I do say, also you're going to get fuzzy, George, now, hello. One thing I do say is when it comes to Doctor Who, often I think me and Aidan do agree on this, when they try and tackle like a real thing, like when they tackled the moon and kill the moon. It's kind of like, why are you changing something that is fundamentally something else? Often it can be to the detriment of Doctor Who, actually. But in this, it's very interesting because by not settling on anything and by simply offering something that's quite, that you can just theorize about, and it's just an idea, and it makes you think by just doing that without telling us what it is. It makes you think without kind of making you feel like it's forcing anything on you. You know what I'm saying? I think it's the only way they could have done this, because it's a brilliant premise. I really do. I think it's fascinating delving into where did this idea for Satan come from. I think that's fascinating. And I think they couldn't really settle on anything, because if you do, I think it's too close to reality, that. But by having it be this something that we don't know for certain, it means that you can interpret what you want it to be, like I'm an atheist quite recently, but for me it's probably just this thing that people maybe were inspired by, that's how I see it. But maybe someone who's heavily religious might see it as something completely different. You know what I mean? I find that very interesting.
And also for like, it's one of that kind of thing which I was saying earlier about the age of this episode, but also that I like it's a question that we can ask as well. Like it's 15 years old. We still don't know what it is. It's never been brought back. No expanded media has ever said, hey, let's bring that devil guy back. It's like, it's still up for debate. You interpret what you want it to be. And that's a cool thing.
There was a finality though at the end of the story, which I'm really glad that they did. So they couldn't bring it back. It couldn't bring a big story arc or whatever. It was just a one encounter kind of deal, like gone now.
Yeah, but there's no, but because you could go before this technically. I know the Doctor wouldn't have met it yet, but in expanded media, if there was other characters, like I'm saying, like if there was a river song, Big Finish, do you know what I mean, something like that, they could bring it in. But it's like, I'm glad they haven't, because it leaves that mystery, and I kind of love when, because obviously Doctor Who's great when we get monsters and we get things like that. But sometimes when they go, I'm gonna throw something at you, interpret what you want it to be, and then that's it. Oh, we're gonna leave it. It kind of creates a really cool dynamic for a Doctor episode where, like I said, it's terrifying, this episode. Like, really, it's kind of, I mean, I'm not watching it going, but I'm sure as a kid I was quite scared, and today I still find it creepy. But you don't really have a monster. Sure, you've got Toby, but that's just a bloke with,
writing on his face.
Sharpies over his face. And then you've got the Ood who only turn evil kind of, at the end of the first episode. End of the first episode. Until then, it's still scary. You still got the voice, and you still got, why is his writing old? It says welcome to hell. Why are we scared of it? Does that writing never even gets addressed again, besides when they first read it?
They do address it, but they don't. The thing is, they're never able to decipher it, so it's not forgotten, but they can't say what it actually says. That's what happens.
But I mean,
Toby says, "Oh, these are the words of the beast." Whenever he's possessed, like I say, Toby, the beast is saying, "These are the words of the beast." So, and then he sort of.
But then again, they're on the thing that's written, which trapped him, and he wouldn't trap himself. So, are they actually the words of him or words of the people that did trap him? It's very interesting.
The devil's not really famed for telling the truth, to be honest with you.
No, I'm. He's not really known to be a stand-up guy, I don't think.
No, but I also think that's one of the greatest strengths of the episode.
They're going to say of the devil there.
It is also technically the point that I'm making.
Yeah.
It is one of the greatest strengths of the episode that it does have that extremely slow burn, as Aidan was saying. There isn't any immediate threat until like even the beginning of the second episode, because like the Ood don't turn until like the end of the first episode. That's when everything starts kicking off and the pit opens. Obviously there is a threat, but the crew don't really know about it. It's not really there. It's only hinted at us really slowly through like the Ood making that weird comment to Rose, and like even like the door AI being like, he is awake. And you're just like, what? If you were a character in those situations, you wouldn't have had any idea that anything was going wrong until it went wrong really badly.
Yeah.
So I think it really benefited from being a two-parter, because they could fit that slow build-up that the devil was sort of manipulating things and making it into his favor before he finally revealed himself to them. And that, I think that really fits in with the character that they were trying to portray, that he was a genius. He was super, super, super smart. as opposed to just the beast that we've seen in the pit.
Yeah,
I do love that actually.
Okay, you go for it.
So I was going to say I do love how the way the devil plans to escape is by splitting its consciousness from the body into someone else. That shows you first off how intelligent this. I'm going to call him Satan. He could just be Dave, but
Call
it
him
really
Beast.
shows you.
He's Beast. He's Beast. In
Yes,
the, in
it
the
shows you
credits,
how
so.
intelligent the Beast is here, and I think it's a very clever way, and also I think it's very interesting how we don't actually see the Beast's physical form speak properly. So you never really make that full connection, and it just means you see him probably as something scarier. I just got flashbanged by my computer.
I saw that. I wonder what that was.
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, George has been swatted in the middle of the recording.
I wondered what that was. I saw a big flash, and then you kind of went, "Ah!"
I didn't touch anything. My hands were. No, but
that's
the
one of those
Beast isn't a fan of what I'm saying.
That's one of those spooky things where we're talking about Satan, and suddenly your laptop starts freaking out, and your camera's not working, and our Zoom meeting ended. We've had to restart it. All these things are going wrong.
That's why I had.
Don't say that, because now I'm actually creeped out. That's
that's why I had a cross on for recording my entire podcast about Satan. It was just a cross above my PC.
You actually?
Just said, no.
Come on. No, but
I might have to get one. Holy water, just throw it on my computer.
Oh, okay. Aidan's gonna get a cross.
He just gets.
He's gonna exercise your computer, George.
I need it. Are you enjoying Fuzzy George, by the way? It's great.
Yeah, no.
The reason I just moved then was because I have got a Jesus thing.
Oh wow!
What is that?
Why have you got that in your room?
This isn't my room.
It's not Aidan's room. He wouldn't.
Isn't my room, but this is.
I don't know. I seen the teddy bear and just assumed.
No, I think I've got that exact teddy bear. Do you pull its legs and it makes the chime?
Yeah.
I've got it. Yeah. Same thing from upstairs. It's the only thing that could make me sleep when I was a kid.
Anyway,
when I was a baby, I was weeping, and they were like, "Listen to this bunny rabbit," and I was like, "Okay."
Yes. Well, anyway,
welcome to the Doctor Who podcast, everybody.
Yes, I'm gonna keep.
They come for these moments.
I'm gonna keep Jesus by the side of me just in case anything else goes wrong.
Protect me, Jesus.
Jesus is there, so Jesus is watching us now.
What were you going to say, George, about I thought you were going to mention whenever you said you enjoyed that the beast itself. I thought you were going to say you enjoyed the body of it, like the
right. Yes. First, I just find it fascinating that they've split the consciousness thing. It's a great writing technique because it's like the classic. If you see the scary thing properly in its full form, it's less scary. It's like an alien. As soon as you see the alien, less scary. But by seeing the beast just as a beast form and not as an intelligent thing, but seeing its intelligence split, it's scarier, I think, for me at least, than if you saw the beast say, "Hello, I am the beast," I'm
Mr. Beast.
Exactly. Maybe it would have been scary, I don't know, but just to me, I find that very interesting. But
I'd be curious to know, Aidan, you said at the start, what was your negative? Because I have a couple written down.
Okay, well, my negative that I said is actually just a problem of series 2 more than just a single episode, and I just don't like the Dr. Rose romance. I've never been fussed on that.
I find it quite sweet actually in this episode.
Same.
I always think there's your 900 and your 19. I always think this is just wrong on every level, and I kind of think.
At the point where you're 900, I don't really think you can find someone near your age.
No, true, but I've always thought like the Doctor should be purely asexual, and then like River Song comes along, and I think, you know what, you're fine. You're the time traveler's wife. I can accept that because it's more of a fleeting thing, and you're not just married and coupled down. But with the Doctor and Rose, and it's all the kind of, oh, tell her, oh, she knows. I think, no, don't get that out of my Doctor Who. So that's the only thing I don't like, but that's more of my problem with series 2. And when the whole thing about they won't they across series 2, I think, no, they won't. Get rid of it.
But they do somehow, kind of half, like they have to with Spawn of Me. Here you go. Here's a different version of me.
Doctor,
I mean, that just harkens back to the soap opera point that I made at the start. There is those soap opera elements in the early David Tennant series that disappear for Capaldi and Matt Smith. Which is why it was such a raging success. I mean, you say that, but it was never as successful as it was.
No, yeah.
Back then.
I mean, because it's like in that scene where they're talking about like, oh, what we're going to do if we can't get back, and they say, oh, you'll have to get a mortgage. And he goes, no, don't. I like that there. And then as soon as she goes, we could move in together. I go, oh, you shouldn't have said that, Rose. You just ruined a really nice scene there.
No, but I'd like that because that's
Yeah.
it's I find it really quite sweet actually, and I think. And I don't want to really pin him down to just one person. Like he will be eventually with his wife, obviously with a song. But I think throughout life and throughout the Doctor's life, especially, he's 900 years old. He's going to change and shift and how he feels towards people and that kind of thing. And remember, this Doctor's quite recently lost basically everything. I can kind of understand why maybe he'd latch on to Rose. You know what I mean? Like a but a rebound from the Time War. You know,
but I can understand latching onto it, but like purely in the friend sense, because I've like you think the Doctor had family on Gallifrey. He lost that. Susan left him, and then for 26 years, even longer. 26 years of classic Who. There is never any mention of the Doctor having any romantic interest, and all
about time. How about that?
And all his companions are just friends. They're just people that tag along. And he always calls Sarah Jane's my best friend. And then
didn't find the right person.
And then even when he gets Leela as the next companion, he's always quite rude to her because you can see he just wants Sarah Jane back and all these kind of things. So then suddenly, and then yes, Paul McGann does the kind of kiss, but the kiss never seemed romantic to me, more celebratory, where he's kind of, yeah, let's kiss. And then it kind of moves on.
I do that as well, Aidan. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I tend to get good news and shove, like snog the next person next to me.
But that's kind of how it comes across in that scene.
I got paid for the month.
But then suddenly he's like, oh, Rose, you're 800 years younger than me. I'm really in love with you. And I think, where's this come from? And then ever since Rose, we've never, and then obviously that he gets Martha as the rebound, and then he gets Don as just his friend, and then we get River Song, and then there's never any romantic stuff again after that. So I think, well, why is Rose the one that gets the special treatment? And I just don't like it.
I don't think we can. Well, we're not the Doctor, and I mean, we never will be, so we can't really. He probably did just fall in love with her. I can't say that, like, you know what I mean? I accept it, and it seems to make sense to me. And I think that he just did fall in love with her, and then he fell in love with River Song, and then it's just been never anyone else. Like, because I do as well. Like, he didn't, like, yes, Martha is the rebound, but the Doctor didn't reciprocate any of those feelings. So, if the Doctor, was going around falling in love with every single companion, then I'd be like, it's a bit weird. But when it's just kind of fair and few between, it feels more real and genuine there. And
also, I would wager that Capaldi's Doctor was more in love with Clara than Ten's Doctor was ever in love with Rose. Personally, he's just not as romantic about it. But they are definitely in a relationship.
But they always called each other best friend, didn't they? So I prefer that kind of.
That's just because they're denying it.
I just prefer I prefer that dynamic of the Doctor makes a friend, or or like when he's with Bill and it's the teacher-student dynamic. I much prefer which also you have with the Fourth Doctor and Leader, the Seventh Doctor and Aidan. You get that teacher-student dynamic a lot, and then there's one in a program that is now 50. What year is it? 58 years old. In a program that is now 58 years old, we've had one romantic interest. That seems like the blip to me. It's like, ignore that. Whereas you get the teacher-student and best friend dynamic far more often. That feels like the more natural fit to me.
What about Matt Smith's constant flirtatious things with Clara as well? And the fact that Amy Pond, I think you're denying a lot more flirtatious sort of ship stuff happening in Matt Smith's Capaldi series than you think you are. Man.
Okay, but it's probably the one element of New Who that I think is weaker than Classic Who. There's not many areas where I think Classic Who is better than New Who, but the asexuality of the Doctor is one where I think.
I think also from a writing standpoint, because this is obviously being broadcast to humans, I think it's a nice connecting point for the Doctor's character, that seeing him fall in love with someone, seeing that kind of thing, because we can understand that, and that's something to humanize him in a way. Yes, we want the Doctor to be an alien, and I think I think the point of the Doctor, well, for me, not the point of the Doctor, but I think he's like an alien who loves humans and kind of connects with them more than any other race since he lost his species. I think that's kind of that's very interesting. And I think having him fall in love with a human and connect like that, I think that's really quite nice, and I really enjoy that. And that's something coming from me, because usually in romance stuff I'm sitting there thinking, oh, for God's sake, I don't like this because I just feel annoyed. That's usually what happens. But for me, I feel it's so well written, I can gravitate and connect to it.
Yeah, I mean, I do like Rose. When I was in Doctor Who club in school, and I was in sixth form, and I used to debate with all the younger kids. All the younger kids who weren't in sixth form despised Rose, and I always had to fight for Rose all the time, because they always used to be like, "Why is there a relationship in Doctor Who? What's this all about?" And I used to be like, "Right, look, I like Rose. I grew up with Rose. I like her." But then I've also, as I've spoken to more people about Classic Who, the amount of people that actually kind of rate the Russell Davies era really low, which I always find crazy, because I'm like, this is literally the most successful the show has ever been. And they go, yeah, but I don't like it very much. And I go, that's just because you're being non-mainstream, aren't you? And they go, no, it's because I don't like the romance. And then I go, fair enough. It's just something that, as I've got older and it's my image of what the Doctor should be is kind of solidified more, it's something where I go, actually, I kind of agree with the Classic Who fans more than I do with the new Who fans. But then also, it's a weird blip for new Who fans, because then the younger new Who fans hate it, and then the old fans hate it. But you've got the one group in the middle who love it, and it's just this really strange kind of.
It was teenagers who watched it and were going through that sort of thing, fancied Billy Piper, and were just like, I completely understand where you're coming from, Doctor. That's the thing.
What are the bits that you don't like then, Niall?
Okay, I like the Ood, right? Don't get me wrong. I think they're great aliens. I enjoy their presence on the show. I understand why they were needed from a commercial point of view, why they needed that action, that tension, constant tension of having an enemy that outnumbers you on a base, right?
And a physical threat rather.
I'm
coming.
Something to fight rather than just this thought.
Give them a reason to run down the corridors, but I would have loved this episode. It would have been my top #1 of all time had they done it like they did Midnight, and it was just an abstract being that was either or manipulating the crew members into hurting each other or killing each other, or manipulating the crew members into doing stuff that they don't want to do, just throughout the first part of the two-parter, until it finally gets to that climax and they realize what's happening. I think that would have been the perfect one. I think that's my main negative, is that it could have been so much more, but obviously I still love it because it's Doctor Who. It is quintessential Doctor Who. I love it for that, but it could have been so much better.
I'm in two minds about that statement, because while I think that would have been really cool, and you could have had kind of like the Doctor Who equivalent of a slasher film, if they're all just
that's what I was thinking.
If they're all just getting at each other, and at the end of it they go, whoa, don't you realize what's going on here?
And then you could have like one of them be the most manipulated, Toby, and just be that can be your Jason, for example.
I do love that idea. The reason I'm like, I prefer the one we've got is because Midnight fulfilled a lot of that anyway. So I feel like I'm not going, the episode we've been deprived on, because I feel like we kind of did get it. And something I wrote was to compare it to Midnight is something that monster is turning everybody against each other and is trying to manipulate them. Whereas this one, the monster is just trying to dissent fear into everybody and trying to just make them panic and just go crazy. And I kind of like that being the difference. Whereas it perhaps would have been too similar if it was just like, if we still got Midnight and this, it'd be like, haven't we seen this already? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's why I'm like, cool idea, but I'm kind of glad we didn't get it.
I think it would have been. I'm with you there, Aidan. I do think it would have been really a nice idea to see if we hadn't got Midnight, but because we did get Midnight, it's like we've seen this done really well anyway. It's not like Midnight was, so we need this better one. And also, I think this episode is really strong in itself anyway. So everything it does do, although. Yes, it's interesting having them just be manipulated, but I think they are manipulated. But I also think this kind of leads down to the fact this isn't an all-powerful being. Maybe this beast isn't the actual devil, perhaps. So it's very powerful, but it also has to use these more easily manipulated creatures like the Ood, for example, to kind of get what he wants. Or maybe the beast just wants to cause more destruction through its own hands rather than be something like that. I don't know. I find it all quite interesting, but I think the one we got also works on that level. Not quite as much as Midnight with the mind stuff, but maybe with Midnight, because we never actually see what that bad guy is, and we don't actually see it be this. Maybe it could just be a cloud, but what we saw is it had to rely on manipulating them. It had to do that. Whereas this beast, it showed that it didn't need to rely on manipulating the actual humans. It could do many other things. And I kind of find that more representative of its power than it just manipulating, you know? I do. I think that you do a very interesting development in Doctor Who, but I do really feel sorry for them. I know they say how they want to be, they like orders or whatever, or however they phrase it. But I also, it never really sits.
Only because they're conditioned to, as we learn.
Yeah, it's never sat right with me because I never liked it.
It's only after it that makes sense whenever you go to see season 4, whenever they go to the Ood factory though. And then it turns out that they're being brainwashed into thinking that, and like their brains are being cut off and replaced with the orbs. So like, yeah, it doesn't sit right, obviously, but there is a reason for it.
Yeah, no, but that's not me taking that. It's a very interesting character. Like it's interesting for Doctor Who because it's tackling something darker than just these are bad guy aliens or these are good guy aliens. It's a middling ground of kind of. And it shows you that like the Ood aren't bad guys or anything; they're purely victims in that sense. Yeah, and it's very, very interesting, and it's heartbreaking. Actually, I find it. Sorry,
you're gonna get really emotional now, aren't you?
I'm gonna cry.
I mean, Doctor Who sometimes can be really, really well written to sort of get because that was the whole purpose of the show, was to give, messages and teach people about lessons and history and that kind of stuff. That was the whole purpose of the show. And I think that it does in some cases miss its mark. I think with the Ood, it really hit it. But then you have other cases like Rosa where it could have hit it, but it didn't hit it. And I really liked Rosa up until the racist bad guy Nazi person got introduced. I don't know if anyone knows what I'm talking about.
I haven't seen
George
Rosa.
hasn't seen that one yet, but we will. It's in our series 2 schedule because everybody goes
okay.
Because people always say, "Oh, what an amazing episode Rosa is," and I always go, "Is it though? Just because Rosa Parks is in it doesn't make it a good episode." If you
took the Nazi, I'm gonna let you guys discover. You guys can talk about it,
but no, we can now just say our final thoughts. Is this? I always try to get a rating out of George because I always try to see if he'll give anything a 10 out of 10 because I just like torturing him to do that. But I would just say I think it's a really strong episode. It's something that I loved it when I was a kid, and then it kind of became a kind of thing that I kind of forgot about. But as I've watched it like 3 times in the past year or something, and now I think I need to give this episode a bit of a rest for a bit. It's an episode that I do think is like a solid 8 or 9 out of 10, where I think is really well done. It's really mysterious. It still freaks me out, even though I'm not scared of it going, but I'm like, oh, this is a bit uneasy. And then to have that effect, and I still enjoy it. And for my one negative point to actually just be a problem that I have with series 2 and the Russell T Davies era and not specific to this episode, that's a good testament to how this episode's done. So I still thoroughly enjoy it. I think it's a really strong episode and a really good pick that I really enjoyed watching today.
Yeah, I would say right out of 10. I gave Midnight a 10 out of 10, but I explain why. If you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to that, ladies and gentlemen. You'll see why. But with this one, I'll have to agree with Aidan with it being an 8 or a 9. I'm leaning more towards 8 because it has to be damn near perfect for me to give it a 10. And Midnight I think a part of the reason why I gave Midnight a 10 is because whenever I think back to it and always just think about it, it never left my mind ever. From when I was a kid, it was always there. Whereas with these 2 episodes, although they're great, I think they are somewhat more forgettable in that sense. I can't pin down why they're like that, but I think they're good, but they're not mind-blowingly good. So they can't make such an impact. But I do think they're incredibly strong and they're some of the best. But I would say 8 or 9 purely because George is a forgetful son of a bitch.
I would honestly, I was going to say 8.5 out of 10. So we are kind of along the same lines, to be honest.
Pretty much averaged out then,
Yeah. I will bump it up to a 9 just because, upon the reflection and things we've discussed and taking away some of the negatives and stuff, I think it has earned it. So I would say like the 2-parter, not single episodes, the 2-parter as a whole is a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, it's one of those where you can't really say part 1 or part 2 is better because I think it's just one big story. With some 2-parters, you can say I preferred part 1 and part 2 let it down, or the other way around. Whereas this one, I think it's just one solid story where neither part really has a strong identity because they're kind of doing the same thing. Besides, one's a bit more tranquil, the other one's a bit more panicky. That's the only real difference. So I do think it is like we've said, this is an episode that deserves to be 2 parts. Because even from the moment they arrive, and it's the cold open for the first part is literally, there's interesting writing. There's we're under attack. And it's like that. We've done this in 2 minutes. So you've got loads. Exactly. So it's already like we've still got
that might be
more to do.
For me, actually, that might be the worst bit of the episode, the whole we must feed. Because like I get you trying to do it's a bad guy, but it was like it doesn't nearly it can't ever land the second time. The first time you see it, it lands. Any other time since, it will never land because it's like, I know they're not going to attack them.
Yeah,
but for the first time watching, I let
Russell T Davies is always called cold opens, bums on seats time. So he's always tried to get it. Let's get these people grabbed. So that would just be him going, grab them, and then just get on with what you actually want to be doing. So I bet if you actually watched all Russell T Davies cold opens, they're probably all kind of similar to that, where it's something's happening. Oh, here's actually what's
you're fine.
yeah. glowing praise all round for this episode. It's a really strong one, and it's good to be talking about series 2 episode that's good, because the only other 2 series 2 episodes that we've talked about on this podcast before were Love and Monsters and Fear Her.
Seeing the to be continued at the end there, I was like, no, Jesus. I was like, no, don't do this to me. I
actually felt quite nostalgic when I saw the next time, because I know that because Love and Monsters was our very first episode of this podcast. So suddenly it was like, back in the day when we used to record audio only, and we didn't even have video. We used to still be allowed in the radio studio and all these things. I was like, those were the days.
I forgot to mention that was actually my I didn't scroll down on my notes. That was actually my final negative, was the next time trailer was Love and Monsters.
And it's such a breakneck change though, isn't it? You go from this 2 really strong episodes to Love and Monsters, which I saw Peter Kay recently live, and he met, and someone actually brought that up in the Q&A, and he said, yeah, it was nice being on Doctor Who. The people were nice and friendly. Shame the episode was though. That's what he said.
You get him on the show.
Yeah, I mean, he's from Salford, and we're based in Salford for most of our uni life. So yeah, I'll send him a letter. Hello, Mr. Peter Kay.
Wandering around Salford, just going, anybody seen Peter? I've got a question.
I want him to talk about Doctor Who.
Yes. So that's that one then. Niall, do you want to plug Gospel of Ghost? Tell people they can find that. If there's a cross section of the audience, just purely plug your own projects, really.
Yeah, sure. If you happen to be a fan of the band Ghost, I run a podcast detailing the narrative of the first 3 albums. You can find it on Spotify, Gospel of Ghost, or you can find me on Instagram at Gospel of Ghost, all one word.
Yes. I've been on 3 episodes of it. So
I haven't. So if you're here for me,
if you're here for me as well, go and check those ones out. So
go and check his podcast out.
Yes, thank you very much.
It was very nice having you on.
Yeah, it was lovely, guys. Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, very good episode. Next week we are going to be doing less of a good episode, because we've said these the guest episodes aren't really good or really bad episodes. They're just whatever people want to talk about. So next week we have obviously our 4th guest, and we are talking about Hellbent. So
I have opinions on that. That'll be interesting.
So we're having a real step down, but yes. So join us then, and until then, I shall say thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.